Chol-san was astonished to see the boy standing up after beating him so badly. But the Kai of the Nine Heavens had awakened in Gyaka, and although he didn't know how to use his power, he decided to use his fist as a sword and hit Chol-san's chest hard, leaving him passed out on the ground. To everyone's astonishment, after the fight, everyone decided that the young Gyaka was still the seventh brother, and his older brother decided to give him a sword to reward his incredible fight, and also, they told him that from the next day, he would join them in the trips to the mountain. The boy was happy and told his brothers that he would work hard not to disappoint them. Upon hearing this, one of his older brothers, Tak Hyung-nim, gave him a piece of advice: fist fights and sword fights are different, and if you let your desires consume you, without realizing it, you will be cut with a sword. Tak Hyung-nim continued to talk to Gyaka and decided to teach him his exorcism sword technique that afternoon. The next day, a large group of merchants were passing by a road near the mountain, and one of them commented that he had a bad feeling. But another man, named Kang Mu-deok, told him that he should not be afraid because he was known to everyone as the lightning sword and would protect him. While they were talking, an arrow hit them and Kang Mu-deok could hardly reach it. They all turned to the place where the arrow came from, and there, they saw the bandits of Mount Wufeng, who introduced themselves to them as members of the bandit union. Kang Mu-deok thought they were underestimating them and mocked them, because he thought they were low-level robbers, causing the group to start their arrow attack against the merchant caravan. But Kang Mu-deok, just by swinging the sword, stopped all the arrows. Seeing that Kang Mu-deok stopped his attack, the bandits of Mount Wufeng look at each other in amazement, trying to decide what they should do to avoid dying at the hands of that man and his warriors. But while they were planning their strategy, young Gyaka rushed forward to confront Kang Mu-deok and his warriors, warning them that no one could make fun of his brothers. The bandits of Mount Wufeng looked at their seventh brother in amazement and fought to stop him. But he was very close to Kang Mu-deok and decided to challenge him. Kang Mu-deok thought the boy was a little foolish for challenging him and that it would be easy to beat him. But when he raised his sword to attack him, with one move, the boy broke his sword. Everyone was astonished and there was silence for a while, until Gyaka asked Kang Mu-deok if it was over, because he wanted to attack him. The man, astonished, only thought of asking his opponent to let him look for a new weapon, and the boy agreed, asking him to take a stronger weapon, because his sword was very weak. It had broken very easily. Kang Mu-deok thought how strong the boy must be, because he had been able to attack him quickly at the last moment and without him being able to notice. He thought that if at that age, he could master his sword so well, he must be very strong, and with a pleading look, he decided to surrender and pay the toll to the bandits. The bandits of Mount Wufeng took their loot and returned home. On the way, the first brother approached Gyaka and asked him what he had done during the raid on the merchants, and the boy smilingly told him that he had only cut the man's sword, using the technique that the second brother had taught him a few days ago. Hyung-nam, the first brother, thought it was amazing that the boy accomplished so much with so little training and asked him to teach him the demon-killing blade technique he had recently learned. Gyaka looked at him smiling and said yes, and excitedly showed them the technique, which all his brothers watched in amazement. Young Gyaka went out on patrol with his brothers from autumn to winter, but none of the merchants' escort warriors were able to withstand their attack, making a name for themselves. The fame of the Mount Wufeng bandits brought 15 new boys to their shelter in a short time, and only 3 months later, they had become a great fortress and began to make a name for themselves in Henan province. But some of the new members had other plans. They thought that by eliminating number 7, to wipe out the group. One of them, number 26, went to talk to a man from the Orthodox Alliance, who wanted to wipe out the bandits of Mount Wufeng, to tell him about the first 2 brothers and Gyaka, and, after listening to him, the man was convinced that the boy would be no match for the Northern Sword of Gumil, a very famous martial arts master. Later that day, Gyaka was standing next to his sister Han Ki-yeon, and she asked him if he knew that some of his comrades wanted to hold a rank fight. Gyaka, while helping her with household chores, told her that if he knew, he had heard about it only a brief time ago. The girl continued to ask him to punish them, because she had heard them teasing the older brother. Truly angry, Gyaka broke the table on which he was chopping the meat and went out at once to put them in their place. His fourth brother, Hyo-im-dao, saw him angrily about to look for the new ones and asked him what was wrong. Gyaka explained, and his fourth brother told him that the first brother was worried that he might hurt the newcomers, and that seeing him at that moment, he was worried too. Hyo-im-dao explained to the boy to take things calmly, because at the end of the winter, they needed to have all the members of the group and they needed to be healthy to be able to help in the activities of their fortress. After chatting with Gyaka, his fourth brother, he asked him to come inside the house, because it was very cold. The next day, the first brother called them all together to talk about the rank fight, in number 26, along with 2 other men, said they wanted to do the fight. The first brother explained the dynamics. From rank 7 onwards, they could fight the battles necessary to occupy the rank they wanted, and after explaining, he asked them what place they wanted to occupy. One of them, the oldest, told him very convincingly that they wanted to fight for the number 1 place, because they believed that he did not deserve to occupy that place and that they had greater strength and experience than he did. The first 6 brothers were very angry about the offenses to their first brother, but he told them to calm down and, looking at the challengers, reminded them of the dynamics of the day. When he finished speaking, he called Gyaka to start the challenges, but one of them just made fun, saying that they had too much faith in that boy. Gyaka was very angry and that activated his Kai. He saw the challengers and approached them with such force that he seemed to be on fire, and asked them who wanted to be the first to fight him. Gyaka stood in front of the challengers and asked them who wants to go first. Number 26, a little frightened, looked at his 2 elderly companions and asked them what should they do now. They tried to motivate him so that on his own, he would offer to fight, but he refused, saying that he felt the boy was dangerous and did not want to fight first. But when he got careless, the elders pushed him to the front and told Gyaka that he would go first. Number 26 thought he was in trouble and the best way to get out of it was to ask to fight with his hands only. Young Gyaka agreed, and when number 26 wanted to hit him, the boy hit him so hard that he sent him far away. Gyaka looked at the elders and asked who would be next, and Yom Sawum, a bald man who was part of the group of challengers, raised his voice and proposed to fight him with his fists as well, but he also suffered the same fate. Then, another challenger appeared, Hwang Yamyam, but he asked to fight with weapons, and although he used them, he was also defeated. Gyaka looked at the rest and asked for the next one to go through, but the 2 elders, still amazed at how quickly the boy defeated the other 3, looked at him and asked for more time, saying they could not agree on which of the 2 was better qualified to be next. But the boy told him that it did not matter, he would be next. The man opened his eyes when he heard the boy and felt he should take out his special weapon for fighting, a fan, and before starting he introduced himself, I am Beak Gyo, and I will not use swords against someone who is in the same fortress. The boy agreed, and when they were about to fight, the man used the fan, whose power was to turn him into a famous demon of Henan province. Gyaka realized that the fan allowed the man to attack him and that fighting under those conditions would not be easy, so he asked the man if he knew what a fair fight was, and when Beak Gyo stopped his attack to listen to him, he hit him and knocked him to the ground. The last challenger was very astonished at the ease with which that boy had defeated Beak Gyo and asked him to wait, that he had no intention of continuing, and the boy warned him that if he dared to mess with his brothers, he was going to die. The man felt bad about having to serve men so inferior to him, but ended up saying yes. To avoid the fight, Gyaka was invited by his brothers to a meal to celebrate the victory. In a nearby village, the town of Hejia, where the Nanyang Merchants Union was located, a man can be seen running to see his master, Li Muryong. Seeing him, very worried, he said to him, Master, what we feared is true. 2 of the great demons of Henan province were seen in the 5 Peaks fortress. The master looked at the man as he sipped his tea and asked him if he knew which of them was the new bandit chief of Mount Wufeng, who was already famous for attacking many merchant groups in the area. To his surprise, the man told him that things were still the same and that the chief of the fortress was still Pun Yoncho, who uses the heaven and earth blade technique. The man could not get over his astonishment. He thought the information must be wrong. After a moment, the visitor told him that he believed that the 5 Peak fortress was becoming a great threat, because the 2 demons were part of the group, which already had 30 members. The master was actually one of the 3 demons of Henan province and was annoyed that the other 2 were considered equal to him. After listening to his visitor, he told him that it was time to put an end to the bandits living in the 5 Peaks fortress and that he would be the one to finish them off, because he had 3 times as many men to deal with them. In the fortress of the 7 Peaks, the night of that day, the young Gyaka is cleaning his sword, when one of his brothers brings him water and congratulates him for defeating one of the 3 demons of the province of Henan, and tells him a popular belief that tells that the great masters can cut people only with a blade. The boy thought about his brother's words and found it incredible. If that was true, he needed to improve his technique and wanted to meet someone who could master it. A while later, still in the night, one of the brothers of the fortress who was watching began to shout in desperation that they were under attack. They were sending fire arrows to the fortress. Gyaka, seeing the arrows, was upset, and some of his brothers were scared and upset. The first brother asked them to calm down and get ready to fight it. After thinking for a while, he asked them not to all go out, to get to safety, while they were building a second wall and ordered a group to hurry up and build it. On the other side of the wall stood the 3rd demon of Henan province, hoping to catch them easily with the fire arrows, but seeing that none of them came out, he thought that by destroying the walls, they could enter. After his warriors knocked down the main wall, they were ready to enter the fortress, but, to their astonishment, there was a new wall, The warriors complained that they could not break down the new wall, and their leader told them not to worry and pulled out an axe. Inside the fortress, one of Gyaka's brothers saw what was happening outside and told them that the man was approaching with the axe. One of the two demons inside the fortress identified the man with the axe as the heavenly swordsman Li Meryong, and told everyone that the attackers were from the Nanyang Merchant Syndicate. Gyaka heard what the old man said and asked if they had the leader of the group in front of them and approached the wall. At that moment, the demon Li Meryong, angry at feeling aggrieved by the members of the fortress, destroyed the new wall with his axe and met Gyaka head-on, who immediately confronted him. Li Meryong was astonished that such a young man would confront him, and the boy only told him that he was angry that he had attacked his house. Li Meryong comes face to face with Gyaka and the boy asks him why, if his warriors outnumber them. They attacked his house with fire arrows, and Li Meryong tells him that this attack is known as the fire attack strategy. Gyaka again talks to the man and asks him to repair the damage he caused them. Li Meryong did not believe his ears and, looking at the boy, told him that he did not intend to repair the damage, because he was there to punish them for assaulting the merchants of Henan province. Li Meryong was indignant, because the boy told him that they had not assaulted anyone. They only collected tolls to pass through their land and told him that he would punish him for making him angry. Gyaka saw him and asked him why they did not fight them, and the man, even more annoyed, drew his sword and told him that he was going to teach him to respect him. Gyaka told him to do whatever he wanted, and Li Meryong replied that even though he was a child, he would not let his guard down. Gyaka was pleased with this answer from Li Meryong and told him that he hoped this fight would be interesting. After speaking, Li Meryong raised his sword and after shouting very loudly, he attacked Gyaka. The boy watched as his opponent seemed to attack him several times in different positions. While invoking the technique called Motionless Noon and pleased by what he saw, he blocked the attack with his sword. Li Meryong did not believe his eyes. That boy had blocked his attack, and his technique was the martial art of the Mount Hua sect and could not be blocked by a simple bandit. After a moment, Li Meryong saw his opponent and asked him where he was from and what was the technique he had used. Gyaka told him that he really had nothing like that and that the martial art he had done was the demon blade technique taught to him personally by his second brother. Li Meryong tells the boy that this technique is only taught in temples, and Gyaka proudly tells him that his technique wasn't bad either, because so far, no one had ever withstood more than one move when facing him. Excited, he tells him that he enjoyed watching his technique and asks him if he can imitate it. But Li Meryong, upon hearing him, gets angry and tells him that the technique is extremely complicated and that he doesn't think he can learn it easily. After listening to Li Meryong, Gyaka was encouraged to imitate the technique and left everyone impressed, because it was perfect on the first try. Li Meryong remembered all the effort it took to learn the technique and found it unbelievable that this boy could imitate it just by seeing it once. While he was thinking how to attack Gyaka during his demonstration, he felt the boy hurt him with his own technique and fell to the ground. Gyaka disappointedly asked him why he had fallen to the ground before he finished the technique, and the man, who could barely move, promised him that he would no longer return to the five-peaked fortress, but to spare his life, and the boy agreed. Gyaka, before letting him go, made him promise to keep his promise to stay away, and after watching them leave, he went back to feast with his brothers. In the fortress, while all this was going on, no one noticed that an unknown man had seen everything from a mountain near the fortress. In the hall of the Mansu Merchants Union, there are several men talking about the current situation of the merchant unions in the area, and one of them says, the leader, Sang Muchan, says, the three largest merchant unions in Henan province fell one by one into the hands of a young man, and this rumor has been spreading to the bandits in Hejia town. All this means that the Five Peaks Fortress will continue to gain new warriors, and before that happens, we need to beat them. As his companions looked at him, the man continued, I am worried that the young bandit who has defeated all the merchants in the area is a disciple of the chief commander of the Green Forest, the Demon Lord Sky Destroyer. Another man who was in the room agreed with Sang Muchan and, with a bit of fear, further said that the boy had appeared just when the sky-destroying Demon Lord was trying to expand, and that he believed that if that was true, they should stay away from him. Sang Muchan was very angry to hear his companion, and with one blow he smashed the table, shouting at him that how could he think of saying that they should run away from the bandits. If they did that, their organization, the Manzo Merchants Union, would be the mockery of everyone and they would have no future. Another of the men in the room asked Sang Muchan what they should do then, and then he told him that he believed their martial arts level was equal to that of the Heavenly Swordsman, and if so, in what way did he think they could deal with that boy? The man thought for a while and confessed to his companions that he did not know how to keep the boy under control, because he had already sent his men to investigate him and had found, by watching the boy's fight with Li Meryong, that he was very strong. Sang Muchan was confused about what he should do, and after a while, he told his companions that he should urgently go to Huang province, because there is the Wuding sect, one of the 10 great sects, where he learned martial arts, and his master can help him to get one of the best warriors to help them fight the bandits of the Five Peaks Fortress. In the best restaurant in Hejia town, 2 of the sisters of the Five Peaks Fortress were standing next to Jiaka, ordering a lot of food and wearing new clothes for the first time. It seemed to Jiaka that they were spending a lot of money, but her companions told her to enjoy herself, because her second brother wanted her to eat and dress well. Jiaka looked at her new sister and asked who she was, and she told her that her name was Ha Sobik and that she had only joined the fortress a week ago. The other girl told Jiaka that Ha Sobik was famous because she had run away from an extremely dangerous man who threatened her to marry him. The girl, a little embarrassed, looked at Jiaka and told him that what her sister said was true, and suddenly a noticeably big man greeted her with a big smile and told her that he was worried about her. He was just the man she had run away from before. The man tried to take the girl away and Jiaka told him to leave her alone. The man told them that they didn't know who they were messing with, that his name was Guak Yongchul and that he was very famous in those lands. But the other girl told him that she better run away, so Jiaka would spare her life and the boy. The man did not pay attention, and only before Jiaka finished counting, he found out who he was. But it was too late. The boy knocked him down with one blow, and while doing so, a man who was passing by, the sage Chung Jai, from the Wuding sect, came closer to take a closer look at the boy. Sage Chung Jai is walking through the streets of Hejia town and his disciple, Sang Muchun, follows him. Sang Muchun is worried about his master's safety because he believes that the streets of the village are not safe, and is curious because his master personally went to meet the boy who was causing them so much trouble. While walking behind his master, he hears the people of the village commenting on the arrival of the sage and gets a little angry. But his master tells him that he needs to pay attention to more important things and that he thinks he should train a little more, which he can do after solving the problem they have in Henan province. The 2 men move forward a little when suddenly they see a man flying out of a restaurant, and behind him, the young Jiaka. The sage did not know who the young man was, but his disciple told him who he was. Jiaka also saw the sage and realized the great energy that surrounded him, but he could not approach him, because his sisters in the fortress were worried about the damage they had caused in the restaurant, and because with one blow, he had broken the table and they had been left without food that day, because he had to pay for the damage with what they had. Jiaka felt bad about damaging the lunch and apologized to her sisters. The girls accepted on the condition that he teach them martial arts. Nearby, the sage and his disciple are talking about young Jiaka. Sang Muchun asked his master why he didn't attack the boy when he saw him, and the sage was only interested to know about the rumors about that young man. And, after thinking a little, he told Sang Muchun that he didn't believe that Jiaka was a disciple of the Demon Lord Sky Destroyer because the young man was too talented to hide it. The sage is very happy to discover a talented young man in that province. A few days earlier, at Wuding Mountain, home of the sage Chung Jai, his disciple, Sang Muchun arrives for a visit and brings him a beautiful gift, Longjing tea, a very difficult tea to find, and his master knows it. When Sang Muchun comes to see him, the sage asks him if he needs his help, and Sang Muchun explains the problems the merchants of Henan province have been having with the Five-Peaked bandits and asks him to help him keep them under control. They both recall the trouble years ago with the Moon Fairy of the Demon Cult and how the Sword Emperor and the Moon Swordsman prevented the fairy from taking over Murim. Sang Muchun thinks that may happen again if those bandits are not controlled and asks his master to send some of his warriors to help them. Sage Chung Jai agrees with Sang Muchun and believes that helping Henan province will be good for the Wuding sect, so he decides to do it personally and tells Chung Jai that he has not left his home for a long time, and that day he saw fortune in his destiny, and believes that Sang Muchun's proposal may be good for him. The sage believes that making the young Jiaka his disciple may be a good decision. At the Five Peaks Fortress, one of Jiaka's brothers tells the elder brother that they have finished the construction of the Harmony Pavilion, a large and beautiful building made with the help of carpenters, counselors, and their families who had recently joined the fortress. The children of the fortress were excited and ran to see the new house, while the first brother thought about how happy he was to see them and commented with the second brother. While they were talking, another brother asked them about Jiaka and ran to join the training the boy was doing that day with his 2 sisters. Nearby, in the forest, the girls are a little worried because they think they are not going to be able to achieve the breathing exercise that young Jiaka is teaching them, because he told them that they should memorize 300 words and they think that is a lot, but Jiaka tells them that little by little they can achieve it. After that, the 3 boys decide to start meditating. The girls finished meditating and wanted to talk to Jiaka, but they saw him very concentrated and let him finish meditating. During his meditation, Jiaka saw his reflection in the mirror and felt that the movements he was making were the same as those of his reflection. He felt that they were one and he liked that very much. Jiaka's joy made his energy grow and the girls saw that and were very impressed. When the young man woke up, the girls told him what they saw and asked him if that was going to happen to them if they continued training. Gyaka didn't understand what they were saying, but he thought it might motivate them and suggested they practice more. When they returned to the fortress, they all wanted to see if the Harmony Pavilion was finished, but they realized that the fortress was empty and Gyaka asked what was wrong. And his elder brother tells him that they heard that a great master, the sage Chung-Jai, was going to attack the fortress and, for their safety, they had all left. The first brother told him that when the news reached them, he had asked Yonggak for advice, but the demon only spoke of how powerful the sage was and how important it was to save themselves from death. And for that reason, they should flee quickly to avoid being in the fortress when the sage Chung-Jai arrived. Thanks to that, everyone had left and only the first 7 brothers and sisters were left, and together with them, Cholson and the 2 girls. The girls, who had been training with Gyaka, were frightened by the news, but they decided to stay in the fortress, and the young man, too. Gyaka had only one doubt: would this sage be powerful enough to kill someone with a blade? The older brother listened carefully to Gyaka's question and replied to the boy that he did not believe that the sage Chung-Jai was powerful enough to kill someone with a blade. Gyaka thinks that then, it is possible to fight against that man, and that gives an idea to his older brother. Gyaka could leave the sage out of combat for a moment, and they could take advantage to attack him in group, which was a good alternative to beat the sage. Although that was a good idea, he didn't know if it was good to put the young ones in danger. After thinking for a moment, the elder brother told them all that he did not want to put them in danger, and that he was officially disbanding the 5 Peaks Fortress. Later that night, the eldest brother was standing in front of the fortress wall, and thinking that he did not want to leave, when the second brother told him that they had all stayed, because, like him, they wanted to protect the fortress, and if they were going to die, they wanted to be together. Together they build a second wall and cook something for dinner. During dinner they agree to keep watch and warn when they are attacked, and the older brother tells them that he is happy to have his brothers. A little later, Kiyon proposes to the older brother to include her, Cholson and Sobik in his sworn family, and he, after asking them all if they agree, smiles and accepts, assigning Cholson number 8, Kiyon number 9 and Sobik number 10. During his shift on guard duty, the older brother, Pung Yoncho, sees Gyaka awake, and after talking a bit, they both decide to do a practice to exercise while their enemies arrive. During the practice, they realize they have a visitor and peek over the wall. At that moment, Gyaka notices his boss's concern and decides to go ahead and challenge him to a fight. When he sees his opponents, he taunts Sangmuchun, telling him that he is a coward, and instead of facing them by himself, he decided to go and beg for help. He also tells them that they are not afraid of them. Pung Yoncho also approached and realized that they were many, but he was no longer afraid. He felt obliged to die for his brothers that day. Sangmuchun, seeing that Pung Yoncho has gone out with Gyaka, realizes that he is the leader of the group and tells him to surrender the fortress at once to avoid hurting them. But Gyaka does not agree and again asks to face the sage, and at once they start to fight. During the fight, the two realize each other's power, and Gyaka enjoys facing a powerful opponent who allows him to fight for more than 2 moves. For his part, the sage analyzes the boy's behavior, sees his strength, and realizes that his desire is to protect his boss. Gyaka and the sage continue to fight, and the sage is amazed to see the boy's skill with the sword, but is annoyed by his cocky attitude and tells him so. Gyaka replies that he is not cocky and asks him if he has seen him before, because he thinks he has felt his energy and he doesn't think he is good enough to defeat him. Gyaka continues speaking and asks the sage if he is able to cut someone with a blade. The sage, listening to him, just laughs and tells him that he thinks he is an interesting guy, but insists that he is conceited and that this fight is his chance to prove his skills. The sage tells him about his experience and tells him that he has seen many warriors with good skills, but he has defeated them all and believes that Gyaka is going to lose too. During the fight, Pung Yoncho, the eldest brother, asks the second brother how he thinks they are doing, and he replies that they are fighting as equals. At that moment, the sage throws an attack at the boy and challenges him to dodge it. Gyaka moves quickly and avoids the blow, which makes the sage understand that the boy is very strong and takes the opportunity to ask him who is his master, and tells him that he feels very good to fight with him, and that he believes he has the skills to learn the advanced techniques of the Wudang sect. Gyaka does not know the techniques that the sage tells him about, but, a little incredulous, tells him that he does not need them, and the sage replies that, from now on, he is going to need them, and prepares to perform an advanced technique. Sangmuchun immediately realizes what the technique is, the Taiji Mystic Sword technique. Gyaka realizes that the sage's movement is extremely fast, and although he tries to defend himself, he feels that he has wounded him in the arm. But he does not see it. Behind him, he hears the voice of the sage Chungjai and feels that he cannot dodge his attack. Suddenly, his two brothers shout at him to watch out for the sage's new attack. But again, the sage wounds him and Gyaka falls. But the sage tells him to get up, because they are not finished yet, and prepares a new move. All his brothers believe that this is the end of Gyaka and look at him in anguish. But when the sage finishes his technique, he looks proudly at his rival and with astonishment, the figure of a giant dragon appears before him. Far away, in the Yon clan fortress, Gyaka's first mother is very happy because her eldest son is about to demonstrate to the clan elders his skills. Mubik, who reached 7 stars during his training with the Nangong clan, was not yet at the level of his late father, but he was proud of his skills and performed a few moves in front of everyone to show them his progress, finishing with an impressive move, the Blessed Dragon Tearing Claw, making a great impression on the elders. Again, in the Fortress of the Five Peaks, everyone is amazed by the figure of the great dragon that can be seen in front of the sage, and they recognize that the technique performed by Gyaka is the Blessed Dragon Ripping Claw, which has left a very large mark on the ground. Gyaka is a little upset because he believes that the sage has been hiding his powers from him and asks him to fight with all his power. The sage listens to him but decides to end the fight once and for all. He thinks it is time to defeat the boy and launches a new attack. Gyaka was already prepared to face him, and, after a couple of moves, the sage realizes that he has no more energy and launches his final blow. But Gyaka responds with great skill and wounds him severely. The sage, still impressed by Gyaka's skills, asks him to repeat his name, and the young man repeats it and explains that his name means sunset. The sage smiles and then falls to the ground. Sangmuchan watches in fear and amazement as his master falls to the ground and Gyaka stands in front of him. Gyaka's brothers are impressed and celebrate the victory with immense joy. Gyaka's older brother lifted him up in his arms, and the bandits of the Five Peaks went to celebrate their victory, to the astonished look of Sangmuchan and his warriors. Sangmuchan approaches his master and asks him to go to be treated, because he is badly wounded. The sage Chungjai sees his disciple in pain, but very happy, because that day he had seen the heavens above the heavens. He continued telling Sangmuchan that it was not possible to punish the bandits of the Five Peaks, because that boy was very strong and that he would suffer if he faced him.